Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. Content designed by Ikigai Tech. Introduction. Thomas Hardy's last novel Jude the Obscure tells the story of a young man looking for enlightenment and education and his dream that was ground down by society. This novel can be looked upon as the coming-of-age story of Jude Fawley. Others have postulated that it is also an anti-Bildungsroman as it documents historical background. The novel portrays the pessimism and scandalized Victorian society, the nihilism and lack of religious beliefs, as well as the frank treatment of sexual relations. He takes a lot of heat for the novel from reviewers and critics, other authors, as well as the general public. The relentlessness and vitriol of the negative criticism caused Hardy to forsake ever writing another novel of fiction, and he spent the remaining 30-some-odd years of his life concentrating on his poetry. Overview. Jude lives in a remote village somewhere in the Wessex countryside, and from his early childhood he loves books and learning. At the beginning of the story, the village schoolmaster leaves for the university town of Christminster, saying that is the place for a man to educate himself. Jude is also attracted to the city of learning, and he decides that one day he will move there, enroll in one of the famous colleges, and by leaving the village and a way of life totally alien to his disposition forever behind, he will finally become a learned intellectual. Jude does everything he can in order to make this dream come true. He spends every spare minute with learning, and in the meantime he also learns stonemasonry so that he will be able to earn his bread before being admitted to a college. He receives the first major blow when he meets Arabella, a young woman who only follows her instincts and has no regard whatsoever for intellectual accomplishments. She quickly manages to seduce the young and inexperienced Jude, and before he could think twice, he finds himself married to Arabella. Their marriage was not a happy one once Jude realized that Arabella was never pregnant. Eventually, Arabella left England for Australia with her family, but without granting Jude a divorce. Years later, Arabella returns to England and has married a man called Cartlet, despite not being divorced from Jude. After some suffering, their marriage comes to an end. He lives in Christminster. The famous colleges don't become more readily available for him, and when a tender attachment forms between him and his cousin, Sue, a beautiful and fragile creature he's never met before, things take yet another turn for the worse. Arabella meets Jude again in a bar and learns of his love for his cousin Sue, who has married Jude's former teacher Philistine. Later, after Sue's marriage falls apart and she and Jude begin to live together, Jude seeks a divorce from Arabella. She grants it, but sends to Jude his apparent son, a little boy nicknamed Little Father Time for his serious manner. Jude and Sue agree to raise Arabella's son, whether or not he's actually Jude's. Arabella now legally marries Cartlet. Cartlet eventually dies, leaving Arabella a lonely widow. She learns from Jude that Little Father Time has committed suicide after murdering Jude and Sue's two other children. Arabella decides to marry Jude again, and convinces him to do so during one of his drinking binges, now that Jude has become an alcoholic following the deaths of his children. Though married, Arabella doesn't care for Jude's declining health, and on the anniversary of his children's death, Jude dies alone at home while Arabella is off celebrating Remembrance Day.